when I'm practicing, especially in rudiments, I run through a number of bars, let's say 12 bars or whatever, and then I would basically automatically move the beats per minute up by 5 or 10 to get a sort of continued speed from 90 to 100 to 110 to 120. And I haven't played along sufficiently with the package to see whether it's an easy way to do such a thing. Probably could be with a playlist with a number of presets. That would be what my thinking. But perhaps there is a very easy approach there as well, other than defining a number of presets with different speeds in one playlist.
Yes, there definitely is. So we can look at that. Let's create, I'll just save this as, let's say, single stroke roll. Let's say that's what we're working on. So we have a preset called single stroke roll, which I can reveal in the preset library. Here it is. Let's put this at the top. So the quickest way to have this be an automated tempo change is to go to the actions menu and choose add auto tempo change.
Okay.
And what that will do is add it to a playlist, and it will call it single stroke roll, and it will put this arrow at the beginning to indicate that it's a tempo change playlist. And when you add it, it tells you a little bit of information here about what it's done. So you can change the options for the tempo changing in the playlist control row, and you can tap the gear icon to choose how many reps or how much time should go by before it changes the tempo. So at the moment, this is set to 1 rep. So this will play for 1 rep. And what's happening is it's in a playlist. So you can have multiple items below this. And when you get to the end of the playlist loops. You can see here playlist controls, auto advance is on, and play and loop forever. So that means this playlist will continue to loop. And every time it goes back to the start of the playlist, it's going to increase by 5 BPM. You can see that.
Okay.
So if I hit play, you'll see rep 1, rep 2 is now plus 5 BPM, rep 3 is plus 10 BPM, rep 4 is plus 15. So this is increasing the tempo automatically by 5 BPM each time. And that will just continue forever. You can leave that going and watch it go up to 10,000 BPM if you so wish. So if you wanted 12 reps of this, you would just tap on the gear button and choose 12 from the reps and hit done. And that will play that exercise 12 times, and then it will loop and add the tempo increase. So I'm just going to set this to 2 so that it's quicker. So here it will play twice, and then you'll get the tempo increase. So when you're using this automated playlist way, there's other things that you can do. And you'll find those in the playlist controls row, which is down here where it says auto advance. So if you tap on this, you have different options. You have play sound when advancing, which will play a sound when it moves to the next item in the playlist. You can have play sound when looping. So if I turn that on, when you have a tempo change, it will actually play a sound to kind of indicate that the tempo is increased. So if we hit play now, you'll get the 2 reps, and then you'll get the sound to kind of let you know that the tempo is increased. So we'll go back into playlist controls and look at what else we have. Playlist looping is on, and it's set to loop indefinitely. You could say just play it 4 times, for example. Let's say two, not 42. I'll say play it twice. And so that will give you 2 tempo changes or 1 tempo change. So this is the first loop. This is the second loop plus 5 BPM. And then it stops because we said only play twice. So that's one way of limiting how far it goes. But more useful in these kind of situations, let me set this back to loop. And here's where you set the tempo change. So we're saying increase. You can choose increase or decrease. So increase by 5 BPM, and you can tap the 5 and choose the amount you want to change the tempo by. And if you choose standard here, it will jump up in the tempo markings that you'll find on a classical metronome. So different jumps for, slower and faster tempos. So we'll leave it at 5 BPM.
Yep.
And you can choose whether you are changing the tempo or the percentage. And I'll come back to that.
Okay.
So we'll leave that at tempo. And then this is the fun part. You can set tempo boundaries. So maybe this exercise is a warm up and cool down. So you say, I want to play this from 100 BPM. So we'll choose a minimum tempo here of 100. And we'll choose a maximum tempo of 115, let's say.
Yep.
And then you choose an action for when these boundaries are hit. So if you click on select action, stop will stop playback when it reaches a boundary. So it would go up to 115 and then it would stop.
Yep.
Reset will jump back to wherever you started and then repeat the process.
Okay.
Reverse will decrease the tempo to go back to the other boundary, and then you'll have up and down.
Yep.
Hold will hold at the boundary when it gets there. So that might be a warm up and then see how long you can hold your fastest tempo.
Yep.
And reverse and stop is like a warm up, cool down, and it will stop when it's finished.
Yep.
Now, what's kind of interesting with some of these things is some of them are infinite, so and some of them are finite. So stop is finite. It's going to reach a boundary and then playback will stop. Whereas reverse, it keeps going. It gets to the top one, it goes back down, and it goes up and down, up and down. So that won't stop. The ones of these that do stop, so let's do reverse and stop. So anything that has an endpoint where it will stop playback, PolyNome can actually calculate how long it will take to play this exercise. So in this example, it's saying the first loop is 4 seconds. So it takes 4 seconds to play through this first loop. And with our tempo settings, it will require 4 loops, and that will take 14 seconds in total. So you can get an idea of how long an exercise is going to take, which has multiple items and tempo changes and things. And this even shows up in Playlist Manager. So if we go into Playlist Manager, you can tap on the sorting at the top. You can see here it says 14 seconds. That's how long this playlist is. And you can sort by the practice time, which is what that is. So that can be useful because you might go, oh, I'll have an exercise with singles and doubles and paradiddles, and I'll play it at all these different tempos. And you can think, I'll do that, and then I'll do this and this and this. And you might find that first exercise takes 25 minutes. So that's just a quick way to see how long something's going to take.
Okay.
Now you'll notice with this that I said that the minimum tempo is 100 BPM and the maximum is 115. And yet I currently have the tempo set to 120. So I believe if I hit play now, it probably will just stop. Let's see. So we get one loop. Okay, so it kind of jumps to the maximum tempo and then it will stop. Oh no. It's
I think we had to first stop.
Yes. So it should go down to 100 and then it should stop. Okay, so now it stops. So so this is saying first loop is 4 seconds, 4 loops to complete. If I set the tempo to 100, this updates and now it's saying 7 loops to complete because it knows that it can go up to 115 and then back down.
Okay.
So you can create tempo change playlists pretty easily like this, and it's pretty customizable. Let's say you were working on something like a single stroke roll that you wanted to increase your speed over time. That does work with this, but you would want to change those boundaries. So you might want to go from 100 to 115 today. Tomorrow you might want to go from 102 to 117. So what you can do is instead of specifying increments like this in BPM, what you could do is if you long press on the play button, it brings up these controls and if you turn on tempo %, that gives you this slider here, which will play back at 10% in this case. So it's the tempo set to 50, but this is going to play back at 5 BPM.
Yep.
And this goes up to 200%. So 50 would play back at 100 BPM. So then what you can do is back in playlist controls, you can say instead of increasing by 5 BPM each time, you can say increase by 5%.
Okay. Yeah.
And so if you were at 100 BPM, it will then go up to 105 BPM. But if you were at 50 BPM, it would go up to, I guess, 52 BPM or 53.
Again. Yep.
So with that, you can have something where if you set this to 100%, so there's 100%, and let's set it, the start tempo is 100. So now it's going to go, oh, you know what? This is 100 to 115 BPM. They're still the boundaries. So here in the boundaries, you can check the BPM or you can check the percentage.
Okay, yeah.
So we want to check the percentage. But essentially that does the same thing, but this time when it increases, instead of changing the tempo, it just moves this by 5%.
Oh yeah, yeah. So now it would, okay.
So let me turn off this tempo change here. So now we just have a playlist, but we still have this percentage slider. So this can be useful.
Yeah.
So let's build a playlist that changes by 10 BPM for, say, 3 steps, say 70 to 100. And then maybe when you get to 100, you don't want to jump in 10 BPM steps because that's too big of a jump. So maybe you then want to jump in 5 BPM steps. And maybe when it gets even faster, you only want to jump in 2 or 1 BPM steps.
Yes.
So you can't do that with the automated tempo changes because there you're only specifying the tempo change that you want to occur every time the playlist loops. So we can do this manually, and there are some tools to make it quick to do. So we have single stroke roll in here. I'm going to duplicate this by tapping on the plus button, and I'm going to choose duplicate selected items, and then it says how many copies do you want. I'll say I want 9 copies. And so now we have the same preset 9 times in this playlist. So if we wanted to go from 100 to 200 BPM, we could manually select each item and change the tempo, but that is quite time consuming. So what you can do instead is the first item, set that to the minimum tempo that you want. So let's say we want to start at 100 BPM. And then select the last item in the playlist and set that to be the maximum tempo you want. So I will set this to be 200 BPM. So you can see that's 200, and I'm going to put this percentage slider to 100% so it doesn't look confusing. So we've got 200 BPM here and 100 BPM here. So what you can do then is select all of the items in the playlist. So you do that by tapping the edit button and choosing select all. And then you tap on actions, and you'll see they have tempo, rep, and timer options. So this allows you to set tempo or reps or timers for everything that's selected. So I'm going to tap in there. And now we can go to tempo options, and you'll see we can set the tempo, which would set the same tempo for all of them. Or you can ramp the tempo, which will take the first item's tempo, which was 100, and the last item's tempo, which was 200, and then it will spread the tempos out over the other presets.
Okay.
And if you do random tempos, it again takes the minimum and maximum, and then it just assigns random tempos that are between those two boundaries for the others. So I'm going to choose ramp tempo, and you'll see that we now have 100, 111, 122, 133, 144, all the way down to 200. So now you have a single playlist, which gives you the tempo changes, and we want this to play once instead of looping.
Yeah.
So I'll go back into playlist controls, and I will turn off playlist looping. And again, you'll see in this row at the bottom, it says the first loop is 33 seconds. So this playlist takes 33 seconds to play through.
Okay.
And now you can see that if you wanted smaller tempo increments as you got faster, you can do that by just manually changing these last few. So let's say we wanted to, when we got to 144 BPM, we wanted smaller tempo increments. And we wanted the max tempo to be 170, let's say. So I'll set this one here to be 170. And then I can do the same process, but this time I'll select 144, 55, 66, 77, 88, and 70. And I'll apply the ramp to these, and it will ramp evenly between 144 and 170. So actions, tempo, rep, timer options, tempo, and then ramp tempo. So now we go 144, and then 149, 54, 59, 64, 70. So bigger jumps on the slower tempos, smaller jumps in the faster tempos. And once more, it tells you this now takes 34 seconds to play because we have more time at slower tempos. And when you set up a playlist like this, where you're specifying the tempos, if you wanted to then do that whole exercise but a little faster, that's where this comes in handy, because if you wanted to play this 50% speed, you can drag this down to 50%. And again, if you look at the row down here, it says this is now going to take 1 minute, 10 seconds to play through. And if you did it twice speed, it will only take you 17 seconds to play through. So that's how you can have differing tempo changes. These are all set to 2 reps. If you wanted, you could have more reps at the slower tempos. So let's say we wanted 4 reps for these first 4. So you can go to actions, tempo, rep, and timer options, and you can set the reps here. So set reps to be 4. So now these first 4 items play for 4 reps, and the rest of them play for 2 reps. So you can customize that, and you can even set timers. So you could have the first one play for 5 minutes, for example, and then, you know, whatever you want for the ones afterwards. If you want to just set the reps for everything, so everything plays once or 10 times or whatever, the quickest way to do that is to hit the playlist time row. So down in the playlist controls, you've got playlist controls row with this multiple gears symbol, and you've got the playlist time row with the clock. You can get to the playlist controls with that button and the playlist time row with this button. So we can set all reps to be 1. So now all of those reps are 1. And also in here, you can set all timers and all tempos. So that's a quick way of doing things. And you can set the first loop time relative and even. And what that means is, let's see how long it says it's going to take to play this. It says it's going to take 16 seconds to play this playlist. But let's say what you wanted to do is work on your single stroke roll, and you want to work on it with this gradual tempo increase, and you've got 10 minutes to spare, and you just want to do this one exercise. You can tap on the playlist time row and choose set first loop time and set it to be 10 minutes. And that will set the timers. So there's 10 items, so it set them to 1 minute each. And if you only had 5 minutes, you would set that to be 5 minutes instead of 10 minutes. And it will set them all to 30 seconds. So that is doing an even distribution between each of these things. The other option that was in there of set first loop time relative will scale up whatever you have in there to begin with. So this first item is set to play 30 seconds. If we had that set to be a minute and the rest of them were 30 seconds, then you're saying, you know, you want to play this first item for twice as long as the rest of them. So in theory, if I tap on set first loop time relative and say that I have 10 minutes, oops, I think that's a bug that it keeps jumping to something strange over here. So now we get 1 minute 47 for this first item and 54 for the others, and it's kind of scaled them up to kind of make them equal. And let's look at what you would do if you had multiple things that you wanted to scale the tempo of. So let's say you've got single stroke roll and double stroke roll, and you want to play both of those before you change the tempo. So with the automated playlist version, that's simple. You just have singles and doubles, and then you set the tempo change, and it plays through the playlist multiple times and gives you those tempo changes. But if you wanted to do something like this, where you had different tempo changes when you got to faster tempos, then you need a manual playlist. So let's look at the quickest way to set that up. I'm going to delete everything apart from that first one. And then I'm going to duplicate this with a new name and call it double stroke roll. And let's actually put a single stroke roll in here, so we'll hear the difference. So I'll put singles in there and save. Don't tell me again. And then for the doubles, in fact, it will be quicker if I duplicate the singles. So let's do that again. So we've got single stroke roll here, and I will duplicate that with a new name and call it double stroke roll. And then I will modify this to play right, right, left, left. And save. So we have a single stroke roll and then double stroke roll. And that's going to play once because that's what we have set. And I'm going to set the sounds of these to be practice pads. And if you want to set the sounds for an entire playlist, you do that by tapping on the playlist name and choose change playlist sounds. And I'll look in sound sets instead of individual sounds and choose pads.
Okay.
So now we've got practice pad and then doubles. Whoops. So what we want to do is duplicate the two of these and then set some tempos. So what I'm going to do first is add a section header. So you can do that in the plus menu, add items. And we can choose, instead of a bar, I'll add a section header. So I'll just call it and all that's doing is it will allow me to group these two items. So you'll notice that if the header is selected, in fact, let me duplicate this header. So what I'm going to do is, with only the header selected, I'll tap on plus and choose duplicate selected, or duplicate section. I want to duplicate the whole section. And again, it asks me how many times. So let's just say I'll make 4 copies. So we'll have 5 lots of this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now if you want to set the tempo of this section, you'll see these are all 100 BPM. Let me, hold on, get rid of that percentage slider because that will look confusing. So if I have this single stroke roll selected and I change the tempo, you can see it's only changing the tempo of this item, nothing else. If I tap on the section header and change the tempo, you can see it's affecting everything in that section. So, so then what you can do is, this is 100. This one you can set to 110. This one you can set to 120. And you'll note when I'm selecting the actual header, it's telling me 120, but that it doesn't have a tempo assigned because it's an empty item. So that's a kind of quick way to go through and set tempos for everything in a section. So now we have singles and doubles at 100, then 110, then 120.
It was the question that came after when you had the first introduction, because I would have for instance, single stroke roll, left hand lead, right hand lead with a different sound pattern to it to recognize that I need to switch from lead hand. But that in the same way as this, indeed.
Yeah. And you can also, if it was a switch like that, and you wanted to know, like, oh, it switched exercises, because maybe you don't have the actual single stroke roll programmed in, you just have a click, and you know, oh, this is me playing right hand lead single stroke, and then after 4 reps, I play something else. So yeah, you can go in playlist controls and turn on play sound when advancing.
Yeah.
And so we've got single strokes, and then you hear that ding to tell you that it's changed.
Yeah.
So then there's a couple of other things you could do. Let's say you wanted to complicate this practice routine even more, and you wanted to play the 100 BPM and then the 110 BPM, and you wanted to do that 4 times before moving on to the 120. Or let's say twice. I always choose smaller numbers so I can actually demonstrate it.
Yeah, that makes it.
Yeah, yep. So we want 100, 100, 110, 110, and then you want 100, 100 again, 110, 110 again. So you could duplicate these 2 items and move them below, and so you can see exactly what you're playing. Or you can go to add items. You can add repeat start. I'm going to tap on this multiple entry so that I can put them both in before. So we'll go repeat start. That gives you the start of the repeat, and then repeat end gives you the repeat end, and you choose how many times you want it to play here. So we want it to play twice. If you wanted more, you would choose more. So add all to playlist. So now you have these repeat markers here and here. So I just need to move these so that this one is above that and this one is below. So now we will get this section and this section twice before it moves on.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to play it through and see if it actually is what happens, because I always find bugs in demos. 110, and then it should go back to the top. So we're back to 100 again.
Yep.
And then to 110. And this time it should move on to the 120. There you go. So it moves on. So using those repeats, you can have different sections play different numbers of times. And once it's in here, if you want to modify this and have it play 4 times, you can tap on the gear and just choose your reps here. So we'll choose 4 times instead of twice. So that's, that wouldn't make any sense, but you get the idea.
Yep.
The pad sounds are samples of actual practice pads with different sticks, so that there's a differentiation. And that can be good and it can be bad if it sounds like whatever you're playing on.
Yeah, then it's going to be difficult to see, hey, I'm still in, or
yeah. So some other things that could be useful with this, you might want to have your exercises like this, your singles and doubles and things, notated so that you can see what you're supposed to be playing. But you might just want to be playing along to a click rather than playing along to PolyNome playing the exercises. So and I'll show you something else. Like this is selected and this is set to play 1 rep before it moves on. And if I hit either of these play buttons, it will play this once and then it will move on to the next item. If you wanted to work on this on its own for a while, if you tap either of these red buttons over here, it disables the playlist and loops the preset. So if I tap play once, now you'll see it says loop and it said playlist off. And if I hit play here, it's just going to loop this item. You'll see it's no longer selected, but it still says single stroke roll. And here you can play with the tempo, and it's not affecting the tempo of this item. It's just affecting the tempo of here, if that makes sense. So that when I go back to select it over here, it remembers that it was at 100 and we're back into the playlist mode. So let me disable this so that we can say, okay, let's say we want a quarter note click to play along to. So I can go into the mixer down here, go to the metronome faders and push up 1. So now we have a quarter note click. And if we don't want to hear this, we just want to see it, we can go to the sequencer 1 faders and mute So now we see what the exercise is, but we're just playing to a click, which might be more conducive. But you'll note that if I load this up in the playlist and play, when it moves to this item, we go back to having no quarter note click and the accents are up. So it would be very time consuming to go through each of these and set those things individually. So what you can do is there is a new feature called Mixer Lock. And if you want to, what did we do there? We pushed up the 1 fader. So instead of doing it like this, if you tap on this fader, when you're in a playlist, when the item that's loaded as part of a playlist, you'll see this padlock. And if you tap it, it tells, the first time you'll see a pop-up saying you're in Mixer Lock. This is now red, and any changes you make here are applied to the entire playlist. So we turn this up. Now we should have a quarter note click for all the items. So we knew we had it for this. You can hear that quarter note click is now there on all of these items. And so now we also want to mute sequencer 1 in all of these items. So here's sequencer 1, line 1. So we'll tap it, tap on the padlock, and mute. And so now this entire playlist just shows you what the exercise is, but it gives you just a quarter note click. You can also, if you turn on the big numbers display, when this is playing, you have this gear icon down here, and you can turn on details, which will show you you're in double stroke 1 of 1. So if you had more things, for example, if these were all set to play twice, or 4 times, let's say, then when you've got this big numbers display, you can see 1 of 4, 2 of 4, and you see you kind of count down to when you have to move to the next exercise. And if you're on an iPad, you can choose to have this display on the just the metronome side, or just this side, if you want to see the sticking over here, or it can be full screen, or you can just turn it off. So that's just different things to look at while you're playing. But you can have Siri read out the items if you turn on announce items, and you can turn on a ready and voice cue, and you can have it announced 1 bar before. So these are set to 4 reps each. So this is going to read out
single stroke roll.
I don't know if you could hear her there. So then it should go
double stroke roll. Ready and.
So you kind of get announced what it is, and then you get your cue. You don't have to have an announce item on. You can have ready and voice cue only, and that will just give you a ready and on beats 3 and 4. So we'll get 3 bars of this, 3, 4.
Ready and.
So that might be enough to get you through. You've got this entire playlist going from 100 to 140. And so now you've set that up with those tempo jumps. If you wanted to do this whole thing, but you wanted to go up to 150 or 160 and do the whole thing faster, that's where the tempo percentage slider really comes in handy, because you've set all the tempo jumps. And now if you long press on this and turn on tempo percentage, now instead of going up to 140 as your max, you can move this slider, and here it will tell you what 122% of 140 is 170. So now, and in fact, if you have this side up, you can see what it will play back at. So if you want to get up to 200, then that means you'll start at 144, and this whole playlist will play back faster. So if you set up something like this, this slider is then very handy for just working on the whole thing at different tempo ranges. Let's say you wanted to mix things up and play these tempos, not necessarily in increasing speed. You just wanted to work on a bunch of different tempos, and maybe you think, oh, if I'm always practicing and speeding up, maybe that's going to train me to speed up. Maybe I want to work on paradiddles at a bunch of different tempos, but I don't want to be always trained to speed up. So I just want, a random selection. So you can keep these sections in order So it always goes singles and then doubles. You can shuffle this playlist. If you tap on the playlist name and choose shuffle, you have different options. So shuffle entire playlist will just mix up every item, but shuffle sections will mix up the sections, but always keep the singles and doubles together in the sections. So now you've got 110, 140, 130, 100, 120. If you wanted to put these back in order, you can imagine that dragging around all these items to put them in order would be, again, time consuming. Whenever there's something that you think, oh, it would be good to do that, but that's going to take ages, check that there isn't a quicker way, because if I've wanted to do it, I probably made a quicker way. So let's say we wanted to go 100 first, and then 110. So I'm selecting just the section headers in the order. Then 120, then 130, and then 140. So now I've selected all of the sections in the order that I want them. Go to the Actions menu, Arrange options, and Arrange sections. And that will put those sections in the order that you selected them. So now we're back.
Back to normal. Has there anybody already defined a set of presets or a playlist for Tommy Igoe's Great Hands for a Lifetime? Do you happen to know?
I think somebody did. Let's have a look in the library. Let's have a look. There's a search in the library. It looks like we've got something. So let's install that and see what it looks like. View imported playlists, Tommy Igoe.
8.
So 8 bounce for 8 reps. And then let's just skip onto the 7.
You get doubles.
Okay, so bounces and then doubles. And gradually increasing tempos. And then long roll. 5-stroke roll. 9-stroke roll. So yeah, it looks like
looks quite complete.
Yeah. If you wanted to do this whole thing more slowly, just tap and hold the play button, turn on tempo percentage, and now you can play the whole thing at half speed. Or double speed. If you want, you can just put a click on for all of these things and mute the actual playback so that you're not playing along to another practice pad doing it. You're just seeing it and playing along to a click. So
8.
So that's playing those. So let's set the sequencer and set that to 0.
8.
So there you go. Now you've got it muted. And 5s. Cool.